Did you know that late-term abortions are most often elective and generally not medically necessary? Did you know that through the Reproductive Health Act, New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo enabled access to more late-term abortions? Did you know that the RHA legalizes infanticide by eliminating medical care to an abortion survivor? Did you know that the RHA lets non-physicians perform abortions, risking the health of a mother and unborn child? Did you know that there is a strong connection between women seeking abortions and those facing violence from an intimate partner? Who benefits from this? Politicians who are incentivized by lobbyists to enact policies which reduce restrictions and enable access to more late-term abortions. Who benefits from this? The abortion industry, which realizes significant profit from the selling of fetal tissue and intact fetus cadavers harvested at the risk of the health of expectant mothers. Who benefits from this? Assailants who face weakened prosecution when penal laws meant to protect abused pregnant women are eliminated. A compassionate society should have empathy for its weakest and most defenseless members. And yet laws written for the protection of an expectant mother and her unborn child are being eliminated. In order to bring stability to such chaos and to prevent it from happening in your state, let's examine events which preceded it in New York. The most merciful thing that a family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. A free race cannot be born of slave mothers. The most serious evil of our times is that of encouraging the bringing into the world of large families. The most immoral practice of the day is breeding too many children. My own position is that the Catholic doctrine is illogical, not in accord with science, and definitely against social welfare and race improvement. Margaret Higgins Sanger, founder, American Birth Control League, which later became known as Planned Parenthood. In 1921, Margaret Sanger founded the American Birth Control League, which later became known as Planned Parenthood. Sanger's eugenics movement in the United States served as inspiration for the Nazis' human elimination programs in Germany. Approximately 60 million people were killed by the Nazis during World War II. In 1973, abortion was legalized in the United States. Since then, approximately 63 million prenatal lives have been terminated. The legalization of abortion in the United States inspired concerned citizens to perform selfless acts of reparation to serve as witness to the slaughter of the innocent. One exceptional advocate for this cause was Monsignor Philip J. Riley. Monsignor Riley was a compassionate priest, a trailblazer, and fighter for the unborn, who dedicated his efforts for the salvation of souls. The influence of his ministry for the sanctity of life, with an emphasis to win over hearts and minds, continues today throughout the world. In the pro-life movement, the name of Monsignor Philip Riley has been synonymous with perseverance. He passed up an academic career in order to answer God's call to awaken people to the scourge of abortion, destroying innocent human beings in the womb. While serving as chaplain at a Brooklyn monastery, he founded the Helpers of God's Precious Infants in 1989. His devotion to counseling thousands of distraught women, saving an estimated 100,000 lives, was a source of inspiration to the Carmelite sisters, to his family, to all who visited with him, Bishop Robert Brennan of the Diocese of Brooklyn stated. Among other founders of the new pro-life ministry was his own sister and mother, Agnes Mary Donovan of the Sisters of Life. He organized police-protected prayer vigils led by Catholic cardinals with up to 2,500 participants at a time. We do three things, added Monsignor Riley. We go to pray, we go there to inform and offer real help, and we teach them to pray. Through the mercy of God, Monsignor Riley impacted abortionists that he knew of during his endless hours on the sidewalks. One abortionist later said he was unable to concentrate in the abortion room while the helpers were out front praying. That abortionist left the industry. Whatever we did, it was just a tremendous blessing to be around Monsignor. He had a holiness about him that I've never felt in any other person in my life, recalled Craig Gantz. We wanted to be holy because he was holy. Monsignor Riley was one of the organizers of the first March for Life in Washington, D.C. After 22 years of praying and offering alternatives at one Brooklyn abortion center, it finally closed. The owners said the continual presence of the peaceful group drove away patients and doctors alike. He continued sidewalk counseling at other abortion centers in Queens. Our goal, our purpose is not only to save the physical life of the child. What we aim for ultimately is the conversion of hearts and the salvation of souls. We seek to join the Blessed Mother and St. John at the foot of the cross, the modern-day Calvary at the abortion mills, where the image of Christ among us today is being crucified. This is God's work, and we rely totally on His help and on the powerful intercession of the Mother of God. The work of this pro-life hero spread far and wide, with helpers of God's precious infants now active in 45 states, including New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, Missouri, Iowa, North Carolina, Alabama, California, and Washington State, and in 30 countries, including Canada, Mexico, Ireland, England, Germany, and Australia. Reverend Monsignor Philip J. Riley, born into this life June 21, 1934, ordained May 28, 1960, Reverend Monsignor 1986, born to the eternal life November 30, 2024. One other driven leader who has championed the cause for life diligently for more than 30 years is Mrs. Winifred Powers. Hailing from County Donegal, Ireland, Wynn's innate reverence for the divine will has instilled in her a desire to glorify God in word and in deed for the sanctity of all life from the womb to the tomb. The Rosary has the power to transform one's own life as well as the world, and that is exactly what Wynn set out to do more than 30 years ago when she founded Rosary for Life. It all started at her home parish at Good Shepherd Catholic Church in Marine Park, Brooklyn. Wynn says she began Rosary for Life because she felt compelled to do so by the Holy Spirit. She knew there was something that the Lord wanted her to do for Him, but wasn't sure exactly how to begin. It was during a retreat that she came to realize that the Rosary was the greatest tool she had to make a change in the world. At the retreat, a speaker reminded the attendees of the power of praying the Rosary in support of Pope John Paul II's quest to gain entry to Poland, his native land, which was once a communist country. Concerned faithful prayed the Rosary around the clock. Eventually, the government relented. I do believe that only God can give a life, and only God can take a life. So we have to pray for all human life from the womb to the tomb, she said. Now, as Wynn retires as president of the organization, she and its other leaders decided to dissolve the corporate entity and transfer the ministry to the community of Franciscan Friars of the Renewal in the Archdiocese of New York. They, the friars, can have masses, they can have benediction, they can do things that a layperson can't do, Wynn told the tablet. Rosary for Life, Day of Retreat, March 8, 2025. Lawmakers had tried to implement the Reproductive Health Act in New York for years, but it had failed to pass the Republican-controlled state Senate. However, by November 2018, Democrats had won back control. Governor Cuomo vowed to take this opportunity to broaden the rights for women. Governor Cuomo had realized his goal and began to push forward with a pro-choice agenda of more abortions, less restrictions. In an effort to emphasize the gravity of the situation to New York legislators, the New York State Catholic Conference issued a memorandum of opposition on January 11, 2019, to help shed light on the intent of the Reproductive Health Act and to expose it as an extreme expansion of what was then the current New York State abortion policy. The conference emphatically opposed this bill and urged legislators to vote in the negative. This bill is an extreme expansion of current state abortion policy. This bill would repeal penal law references to abortion and insert a health exception into the newly written public health law. Such a health exception includes age, economic, social, and emotional factors, and will allow abortion into the 9th month. Healthcare practitioner authorized under Title 8 of the Education Law may perform an abortion includes nurse practitioners, physician assistants, midwives, as well as other non-physicians to do both chemical and surgical abortions. Lesser trained and less experienced non-physicians to perform abortions is hazardous for women and infants. This legislation removes current penal law protections for pregnant women in cases of coerced or unwanted abortion. Repealing these laws and proposing no penalties whatsoever for violation of the proposed new law does a grave disservice to pregnant women, the very much wanted children they carry, and any possibility of justice for them when crimes are committed against them. This bill would ordain abortion as a fundamental right and declare that that state may not discriminate, deny, or interfere with this right. The right to abortion could supersede even the right of conscience. Doctors and other health providers may be compelled to perform abortions or risk losing their license to practice. Medical facilities, even religious ones, could be forced to allow abortions on site or risk fines, penalties, loss of funding, operational certificates, or other punishment. Public Health Law Section 4164 gives full legal protection to any child who might be born alive as a result of an abortion. It also requires a second doctor be available during a late-term abortion to help give medical care to any such child. But this legislation repeals these protections. The right to abortion should never extend to justify the denial of fundamental civil rights and protections to born, living, breathing human children. Despite the issuance of the memorandum by the New York State Catholic Conference, on January 22, 2019, the 46th anniversary of the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision, which legalized abortion in the United States, Governor Cuomo commemorated this date by officially amending the public health law and instituting the Reproductive Health Act, which, by removing protections for survivors of abortion, has redefined the parameters to include infanticide, abortion at full term. This radical expansion of abortion on demand through birth is a tragedy to be mourned, not a victory to be celebrated, Marjorie Dannenfelser, the president of the anti-abortion group Susan B. Anthony List, said in a statement. The new law moves abortion regulations from the state's criminal code to the health code, thereby removing the threat of criminal prosecution for medical professionals who perform abortions. Did New York just put pregnant women at greater risk? The Reproductive Health Act is a dangerous step back. There's a strong correlation between women who seek abortions and those who are facing violence from an intimate partner. A study in the Journal of Midwifery and Women's Health found that 43% of deaths of pregnant women over 8 years in Washington, D.C. were homicides. Pregnant women are more likely to suffer violent trauma and are twice as likely to die after trauma than are women who are not pregnant. 77% of maternal deaths take place before 20 weeks gestation, a time when a fetal death certificate is not required. Homicide is now the second leading cause of injury-related death for pregnant women in the United States. Like Roe v. Wade before it, the RHA actually serves the interests of men, not women. Tragically, New York women are less safe from violence now than they were before the passage of the Reproductive Health Act. The following analysis breaks down the course of action taken by Governor Cuomo to amend the public health law in order to implement his Reproductive Health Act. The public health law was amended for the purpose of enacting the Reproductive Health Act. The law was amended to include new Article 25A. The article gives every pregnant female the fundamental right to an abortion without exception. The article stipulates that any authorized healthcare practitioner can perform an abortion. A licensed physician is no longer required. A healthcare practitioner may now perform an abortion whether the patient is within 24 weeks of conception or if the abortion is necessary to protect the patient's life or health, regardless of the advanced stage of pregnancy. Public Health Law, Section 4164. This section, which advocated for the protection of an abortion survivor, was repealed. Trump announces executive order to protect babies who survive abortion. During his first term, President Donald Trump announced he will be signing a Born Alive executive order to ensure that all precious babies born alive, no matter their circumstances, receive the medical care that they deserve. Trump called this measure our sacrosanct moral duty. The executive order, once signed, will protect babies born alive after a failed abortion. But it was blocked by the Senate. Senate blocks bill on medical care for children born alive after attempted abortion. All but 3 Democrats voted against the procedural motion on the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, denying it the necessary 60 votes to proceed. The final vote count was 53 in favor and 44 opposed. Education Law, Section 6811, Subdivision 8 prohibited the sale of distribution of contraceptives to minors. This subdivision, which had been set in place for the protection of minors, was repealed. Penal Law, Section 12540, Abortion in the Second Degree. This statute, which criminalized the act of performing an unlawful abortion, was repealed. Penal Law, Section 125.45, Abortion in the First Degree. This statute, which criminalized the act of causing a miscarriage of a female pregnant for more than 24 weeks, was repealed. Penal Law, Section 125.50, Self-Abortion in the Second Degree. This statute, which criminalized the act of committing a self-abortion, was repealed. Penal Law, Section 125.55, Self-Abortion in the First Degree. This statute, which criminalized the act of committing a self-abortion when pregnant for over 24 weeks, was repealed. Penal Law, Section 125.60, Issuing Abortional Articles. This statute, which criminalized the act of providing the tools for causing an unlawful miscarriage of a pregnant female, was repealed. The heading of Article 125 of the Penal Law. The amendments to the Penal Law eliminated all reference to abortion and to self-abortion. Subdivision 2 and 3 of Section 125.05 of the Penal Law. All references to abortion were repealed. Penal Law, Section 125.15, Manslaughter in the Second Degree. This subdivision, which criminalized the act of committing an abortion resulting in the death and was classified as manslaughter, was repealed. Penal Law, Section 125.20, Manslaughter in the First Degree. This subdivision, which criminalized the act of committing an abortion resulting in death of a female pregnant for more than 24 weeks and was classified as manslaughter, was repealed. Accused murderer spared abortion charge thanks to Cuomo's new law. This murder was committed just 2 weeks after Cuomo's signing of the RHA. Anthony Hobson, 48, was to be charged with second-degree abortion as well as murder in the fatal stabbing of Jennifer Irigoyen, 35. But a DA spokeswoman later told the Post that the abortion charge was repealed by the legislature and this is the law as it exists today. Cuomo signed the RHA into law on January 22, the 46th anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision. The law removes abortion from the state's criminal code and puts it into public health law. Paragraph B of Subdivision 8 of Section 700.05 of the Criminal Procedure Law. The amendment to the penal law eliminated all reference to abortion. Subdivision 1 of Section 673 of the County Law. This amendment removes the authority of a coroner or medical examiner examining the death of a person, of someone gravely injured, or of an unidentified body whose death appears to be caused by a suspected criminal abortion from assigning said classification. Section 4 of the Judiciary Law. The amendment to the Judiciary Law eliminated all reference to abortion. Senator Patty Ritchie. Senator Ritchie, on behalf of our men's ministry, we understand that you are leading an initiative to reinstate penal laws for the protection of expectant mothers and unborn children. We may help you achieve your goal, which would ultimately serve all of New York. James Regan. Thank you for contacting State Senator Patty Ritchie with your thoughts about supporting her pro-life agenda. We hope that you will educate state legislators in Brooklyn who do not support life and candidates who support your views. It is important for them to realize that people like you oppose expanded abortion laws. Thank you again for reaching out. New York State Catholic Conference. Ms. Gallagher, on behalf of our men's ministry, we understand that the New York State Catholic Conference supports initiatives focused on the promotion of pro-life endeavors, hopefully to undo New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo's Reproductive Health Act. Working together, we may help achieve our common goal, which would ultimately serve all of New York and beyond. Kathleen Gallagher, thank you for your letter. Unfortunately, from a legislative standpoint, I do not have much hope to offer. The legislature and the governor's office at the current time are overwhelmingly against our belief in the sanctity of human life. A repeal of the RHA is impossible at the current time. Kathleen Gallagher. The need for accessible late-term abortion remains an unsettled debate among those for and against this controversial procedure. In order to determine what is most beneficial to both mother and unborn child, let's consider the facts presented by science and by medical professionals. According to Dr. Ann Davis, there are some fetal conditions that you cannot diagnose until later in pregnancy, even with the best sonogram in the world. We're not able to figure stuff out on the early side for everybody. I think it's hard for people who don't provide obstetrical care to really understand what women go through and the potential risks. In contrast to Dr. Davis, the following feedback provides a common perspective shared by doctors who thoroughly understand the associated potential risks women face. OBGYN Dr. Omar Hamada, there's not a single fetal or maternal condition that requires third trimester abortion. Not one. Delivery, yes. Abortion, no. OBGYN Anthony Levatino, a reformed abortionist. To save mothers' lives, the number of unborn children that I had to deliberately kill was 0. Pro-life group The Dublin Declaration affirmed that abortion is never necessary to save the life of a woman. The organization Secular Pro-Life has shown abortions in the second and third trimester are most often elective and generally not medically necessary. What factors could possibly lead an expectant mother to elect to undergo such an extreme and controversial procedure? The court documents and short testimony you are about to see are publicly available from the U.S. Federal District Court of Northern California, case number 316CV00236, and at centerformedicalprogress.org. Recent investigations and subsequent courtroom testimony have exposed the covert selling of fetal tissue and late-term aborted fetuses as a highly lucrative business for the abortion industry. Research facilities will pay significant prices for the purchase of fetal body parts and intact fetus cadavers harvested at the risk of the health of the expectant mother. Even though federal law prohibits such transactions from taking place. It shall be unlawful for any person to knowingly acquire, receive, or otherwise transfer any human fetal tissue for valuable consideration. 42 U.S. Code 289G-2. Valuable consideration equals quid pro quo. Publicly, Planned Parenthood denied the truth of CMP's undercover videos. But watch what they finally admitted when we put them under oath. Fetal trafficking under oath. Planned Parenthood's admissions about baby parts sales. Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast Senior Director wanted to move forward with the sale of fetal livers for $750 per liver and $1,600 for liver thymus pairs, as documented in contemporaneous emails. FYI, we're still trying to move forward with this. Do you want to do this? Yes, ma'am. Dr. Ferguson signs PPMM's contract with STEM Express to sell fetal body parts. Dr. Ferguson's endorsement appears on a STEM Express brochure advertising fiscal rewards and financial profits. Yes, I understood that that's what they were trying to do. PPMM does over 17,000 abortions a year, and unsealed invoices show PPMM making $25,000 in just 3 months from STEM Express. Dr. Nucatola testified, I knew Planned Parenthood Los Angeles was getting payments because I was a provider there. We're very good at getting heart, lungs, liver. We've been very good at getting heart, lung, liver because we know that, so I'm not going to crush that part. Dr. Mary Gatter testified that PPFA provided a waiver for PPLA to begin the program. In late 2015, Novogenics Labs shut down, facing congressional investigation of its relationship with Planned Parenthood Los Angeles and officials at PPLA. FBI and U.S. Department of Justice. In late 2017, the DOJ announced it had opened a federal investigation, and 2 Southern California companies admitted guilt to selling body parts in a $7.8 million settlement with the Orange County District Attorney. The Small Business Administration demanded 37 Planned Parenthood affiliates return $80 million in loans fraudulently certified, and 27 senators called on Barr to broaden the DOJ investigation. CMP Project lead David Daleiden notes, the time has come for federal consequences for Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood lied to the public and to Congress, but now there is no longer any reasonable doubt that Planned Parenthood sold fetal body parts, commodifying living children in the womb and treating pregnant women like a cash crop. The U.S. Department of Justice must escalate the enforcement of laws against fetal trafficking to the highest level of priority. Grand jury indicts abortion foes behind undercover videos. The Texas Tribune. A Harris County grand jury on Monday indicted the videographers behind the undercover recordings of a Planned Parenthood clinic in Houston and cleared the women's health provider of any wrongdoing. The indictments include charges for tampering with a governmental record, a second-degree felony that carries a punishment of up to 20 years in prison. State Republican leaders last year pushed for investigations into Planned Parenthood after videos were released depicting Planned Parenthood officials across the nation discussing how their providers obtain fetal tissue for medical research. The videographers visited the facility last April under the guise of discussing tissue research with our clinic research staff, according to Planned Parenthood. The people behind this fraud lied and broke the law in order to spread malicious lies about Planned Parenthood and to advance their extreme anti-abortion political agenda, said Melanie Linton, president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast. As the dust settles and the truth comes out, it becomes totally clear that the only people who engaged in wrongdoing are the criminals behind this fraud, and we're glad they are being held accountable. Harris County District Attorney Devin Anderson launched a criminal investigation into Planned Parenthood in August at the urging of state leaders, including Republican Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Despite the grand jury's indictments, Republican Governor Greg Abbott said the state would move forward with its investigations of Planned Parenthood. Disclosure: Planned Parenthood was a corporate sponsor of the Texas Tribune in 2011. Charges dismissed against the anti-abortion activist who made video. Criminal charges against the anti-abortion activist behind the undercover recordings of a Houston Planned Parenthood facility were dismissed. David Delayden and Sandra Merritt, the videographers who infiltrated Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast, had been charged with tampering with a governmental record, a second-degree felony charge that carries up to 20 years in prison. A court clerk confirmed that the Harris County District Attorney's Office files the motion to dismiss the case against Delayden and Merritt. Delayden and Merritt were accused of using fake California driver's licenses to enter the Planned Parenthood facilities, where they recorded staff discussing the cost of providing fetal tissue for research. The tampering with a governmental record count was the last remaining charge against the activists. Attorneys for the anti-abortion activists celebrated the dismissal, calling the indictments bogus and baseless. This meritless and retaliatory prosecution should never have been brought, Breen said in a statement. Planned Parenthood did wrong here, not David Delayden. AUL celebrates victory for David Delayden, a hero for exposing abortion industry abuses. The Americans United for Life, AUL, applauds the recent decision to dismiss former Vice President Kamala Harris's lawfare action against pro-life advocate David Delayden, whose investigative work courageously exposed the unethical and profit-driven practices within the abortion industry. Delayden's undercover reporting revealed shocking truths about Planned Parenthood executives prioritizing profits over the welfare of women and children, sparking a national conversation on the abortion industry's dark underbelly. The case's outcome is a huge win for Delayden, who has been defending his undercover journalism activities in court over the past decade. Delayden's work unveiled practices that shocked the nation and catalyzed further legislative and cultural change. Delayden's ability to prevail demonstrates the resilience of the pro-life movement. The practice of contributing to political campaigns and the lobbying of politicians is a means to gain influence for preferential treatment in the governmental policy-making process. Planned Parenthood follows this custom and reveals the path and affiliations chosen to reach this goal based on the following history of contributions made thus far. Planned Parenthood Political Action Committee contribution data 2000 through 2020. Throughout the years, Planned Parenthood has contributed to political action committees for the Democrat and Republican parties. As the record shows, during the past 20 years alone, a total of $5 million has been paid. Of that, 97%, or $4.8 million, was paid to the Democratic PAC, while 3%, $170,000, was paid to the Republican PAC. In contrast to the $5 million that Planned Parenthood sets aside for political campaign contributions, the data shows that the amount of government funding that Planned Parenthood takes in within a similar time span is more than 100-fold in comparison. Planned Parenthood's government funding. Government funding to Planned Parenthood, $617 million. Planned Parenthood political contributions, $5 million. The progression of abortion policies which lead to reduced restrictions and greater access, combined with the presence of an industry that would realize monetary reward and financial gain as a result of such policies, and the erosion of laws no longer in place to offer protection, puts at great risk the well-being of a vulnerable expectant mother and unborn child. If you kill a preborn sea turtle, you face a $100,000 fine and 1 year in prison. If you kill a preborn bald eagle, you face a $250,000 fine and 2 years in prison. In New York State, if you kill a preborn human being, there is no penalty. In addition to the Reproductive Health Act, Governor Cuomo enacted several other laws in order to advance his pro-choice agenda. One of these was the Comprehensive Contraceptive Care Act. Another was the BOSS Bill. The Comprehensive Contraceptive Care Act expanded access to contraception partially by eliminating access restrictions to minors, which had been put in place for their protection. It also expanded protections against discrimination from employers for using contraception. The BOSS Bill, signed into law by the governor in November of 2019, would compel organizations who object to extinguishing unborn life, even those whose mission is advocating for the dignity of life, to hire employees who endorse and promote abortion. The BOSS Bill tells employers they must be willing to employ people whose beliefs and behavior as to reproductive health decisions run counter to their own. Organizations such as a church, a Catholic school, or a pregnancy care center would now be required by state government to hire people who have no respect for their faith and to oppose their pro-life convictions. Under this bill, an employer cannot require workers to sign a code of moral conduct, and employers would be forced to include these reproductive health rights in their employee handbooks. Effectively, such organizations would be compelled to undermine their own reason for being, to compromise their own integrity. Alliance Defending Freedom has filed a pre-enforcement federal civil rights action on behalf of pro-life pregnancy care centers and a church regulated by the BOSS Bill. This law violates their First Amendment rights to expressive association, free speech, religious autonomy, and the free exercise of religion. Known as Campus Care versus Cuomo, litigation for this case is currently ongoing. In summation, the Reproductive Health Act replaced the 1970s state abortion law, which had been in place for 3 years prior to Roe legalizing abortion nationwide in 1973. In effect, the change was an extreme expansion of the current state abortion law. The elimination of penalties for violation of the new law proved to be a grave disservice to pregnant women. New York women are less safe from violence now than they were before the passage of the Reproductive Health Act. Brooklyn Witness for Life, Rosary Prayer Rally. St. Paul Roman Catholic Church, Saturday, July 10th, 2021, 8 a.m. Mass. On June 24, 2022, in the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, the U.S. Supreme Court overturns 50 years of precedent, overruling Roe v. Wade and giving the individual states the right to allow, limit, or ban the practice altogether. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start, Justice Samuel A. Alito Jr. wrote for the majority in the 6-3 decision. It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. Manhattan Witness for Life, Rosary Prayer Rally. Basilica of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral, Saturday, July 3, 2022, 8 a.m. Mass. 2 weeks after the Supreme Court decision to eradicate Roe v. Wade. Brooklyn Witness for Life, Rosary Prayer Rally. St. Charles Borromeo Roman Catholic Church, Saturday, July 13th, 2024, 8 a.m. Mass. Father Eamon Murray encourages parishioners to keep fighting for the unborn. This is a moment of grace that God has given us. Many people have prayed. We must not think that everything is done. We must pray that America returns back to God. Onward, Christian soldiers. We have no reason to despair that one day evil will completely disappear. Father Eamon Murray. Father Fidelis Moshinsky found guilty of violating the FACE Act after locking gates to abortion facility. January 26, 2023. Catholic priest and 2 others sentenced to jail for Red Rose Rescue. Pro-life activist priest convicted of violating FACE Act. Trump pardons 23 pro-life activists convicted of FACE Act violations. The pardons corrected the injustice of our prosecutions and incarceration, but the daily and horrific injustice of abortion continues, said Father Fidelis, and it must be stopped. Although it might be politically expedient to say that each state should make its own laws about abortion, this position is morally incoherent, he said. We invite President Trump to abandon this incoherence and show himself to be a president of all Americans, born and unborn. Planned Parenthood must be immediately defunded, shut down, and prosecuted. Now is the time for pro-life New Yorkers to work for the repeal of the Reproductive Health Act and for the passage of legislation that will protect the right to life of unborn children. Father Fidelis Moshinsky, CFR. Manhattan Witness for Life, Saturday, September 7, 2024. Manhattan Witness for Life, Saturday, March 1st, 2025. Planned Parenthood selling Soho property, looking to close its only Manhattan clinic. March 19, 2025. Candlelight Vigil, Friday, April 4th. Final blessing following last Manhattan witness at Bleecker Street, Saturday, May 3rd, 2025. A baby will inspire a young mother to persevere through life's travails toward her full innate potential. Maya Angelou, famed poet, author, civil rights activist, and philosopher, was destined to be special. Wrote the book I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings in 1969, which brought her international recognition and acclaim. Wrote her 3rd book of poetry, The Inspirational, and Still I Rise, first published in 1978. Wrote and recited the poem On the Pulse of Morning for the first inauguration of President Bill Clinton on January 20, 1993. Awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2010 at the age of 86. I'm telling you that the best decision I ever made was keeping that baby. I can't imagine my life without him. Having my son brought out the best in me and enlarged my life. Years later, when I was married, I wanted to have more children, but I could not conceive. Isn't it wonderful that I had a child at 16? Praise God. I had a child. Praise God. Maya Angelou, American Icon, 1928 to 2014. Learn the facts. Take a stand. Save their future. Pennsylvania Avenue, East New York, Brooklyn, New York. Titmus Avenue, Brownsville, Brooklyn, New York. Times Square, New York, New York. Hanacraw, New York. Can you see Jesus creating each and every baby with his hands, taking the time to create each one of us? Psalm 139, 13-14. For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well. In remembrance of Monsignor Philip J. Riley, for instilling leadership through compassion, 1934 through 2024. Rest in peace. In appreciation of Win Powers, for the gift of foresight to build a pro-life ministry and to the charity to entrust its evolvement to the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal. In appreciation of Timothy and Bianca Gorassi, for the initial concept which fostered a quest for truth and for teaching it through example. Russell Wright, for his witness to reality. Alyssa Bautista, for the inspiration to inform boldly. Brian Aguirre, for revelation of facts. Father Eamon Gerard Murray, for continued exemplary stewardship of Brooklyn Witness. Father Fidelis Moshinsky, CFR, for the countless fearless, selfless acts of reparation to save the unborn.